Welcome to Popplers Music Podcast. I'm your host, Josh Gratton, and every episode we sit down with the voices shaping the future of music education, from classroom educators and university professors to composers and professional musicians who inspires the next generation of musicians. I hope you enjoy today's conversation. Welcome to the Popplers Podcast. I'm excited to share a very special guest today. His name is Toby Thomas. Now, Toby works for Yamaha Corporation of America, serving on the band and orchestra division. His exact title is called district manager, but that's a pretty businessy jargon to explain what Toby does for work. I hope you enjoy the conversations around serving music education, Toby's unique perspective in the music industry, going from a professional musician to an educator to the business side of music education. And again, I was thoroughly inspired from his perspective of service and the different angles that you can actually serve students and beginning band and orchestra students on the business side of the industry. Anyway, enjoy our conversation with Toby Thomas. Well, thank you for coming in today, Toby. Thanks for visiting the store. And, for those watching, Toby was here doing product training with us. We got to go over all things intermediate and professional line woodwinds that Yamaha has to offer on the band side. So that's what sparked this. And now we're fortunate enough that Toby decided to stay around and chat. So thanks for being here.
Absolutely. You're very welcome.
Yeah. So, Toby, people that are going to, find this podcast, we're going to send it to customers and have it on our social media. They may know who I am and, know Popplers, but please introduce yourself. Who's Toby? And if you could also start off with your musical journey in life.
Yeah, absolutely. Who is Toby? A deep philosophical conversation.
Yeah.
No, so a little bit about me and my background in the music world, so to speak. So, saxophone player by trade. Once upon a time, I don't play very much anymore, sadly.
Yeah, we have that in common. Yeah. We went down the rabbit hole of classical saxophone music in college.
Absolutely, the sax wings.
Yep.
I did my undergrad in music ed, Illinois State. Grew up in the central Illinois area. Taught for a number of years there. And then, speaking of saxophone wings, went out to UMass. That's where I got my master's. So I did the saxophone performance thing out there for a couple of years, studied with the great Len.
I didn't know you had your master's in sax performance.
Yeah.
Oh, we've only talked about performances and stuff, but I didn't realize.
Yeah. So I decided, I knew I was kind of wanted to do it. I mean, I always enjoyed playing, both on the classical and the jazz side of the horn, but, knew I wanted to get into teaching, but was really passionate about the playing side too. So I knew at some point, ultimately, I wanted to study with a person, right? And so, did the grad school thing after a couple of years of public school teaching. So studied with Lynn Clark for a couple of years, which was amazing. What a great human, a great saxophone player, and also hits a golf ball dead straight, like 350 yards.
Holy, oh, okay.
It's like 5'0" and just hits it a mile. But anyway.
He knows something we don't.
Yeah. So, but did that for a couple of years, did the grad school thing out there, and then got back into teaching. So taught for a year actually out in Massachusetts, and then came back to Illinois, back where I student taught.
Well, this is a whole part of your life. I didn't know you lived in Massachusetts.
Oh, yeah, man. I was out there for 3 years, right? 2 years grad school and 1 year teaching. I might have stayed out there and taught longer, but the program that I was in was a great program. But I still remember the principal came to my office one morning. It was the morning after we had just given our first concert of the year, the fall concert. Mm-hmm. When he comes in, he says, "Oh yeah, great concert last night. Really enjoyed it, and things seem to be going well. I'm getting good feedback from, the other teachers that you teach with and from the kids, and things seem to be going really well. And I would love it if you would stay here for the rest of your career." And I was waiting for the but, and then the but came, and it said, "But we probably won't have a job for you here next year." So they were cutting like millions of dollars from the school budget. And so mine was one of the things that was potentially going to get axed in my position. So,
that's stressful.
Did the search. Yeah. Look back, but where I was student taught, they, one of the teachers there was retiring. So there was an opening. So put the door there. So I made that choice and got back now. And eventually that job actually got saved. So they did an override vote in the town. The people in the community voted to raise their taxes a little bit to save some of the positions, which was great. So that position is actually still there. There's still a person there teaching band there, which is good. It was a good program. It's a great town. But so I was out in Amherst there for a few years, came back, taught for another couple of years, and then actually made the transition from public school teaching to on the school service dealer side. So became a road rep at a dealer called Kidder Music in Peoria, Illinois. Shout out Kidder.
And how about how long were you teaching from
total
on both sides of your master's there?
Yeah, so in total about 5 years.
Okay.
And it's interesting. There's a statistic, at least there was at the time, about new teacher burnout, specifically in music education, and it was 4.5 years on average. So I fit right into that average, and I hit that. I hit a moment where. So the last school that I taught was a great program. I was teaching with really great directors, good kids, supportive community, supportive administration. And I knew that if I was in a situation like that, which was good in a lot of ways, but I was still feeling really burnt and burnout and stressed and tired from that. If I was unhappy in that situation, that's when I knew, like, okay, it's time for me to step back from this. I mean, obviously, I would, still be in this industry if I didn't understand the value of music education and how important it is, right? And so, but there was a moment where I had to be real with myself and say, even though, yes, music education is so very, very important, and it's a good fight to be fought out there, it doesn't necessarily mean that I have to be one in the trenches, fighting that fight. I can get on other sides of it and still be supportive of the industry.
Yeah.
So,
well, and that's the cool part about the industry is there's multiple ways to serve. We can touch on that, but
for sure.
But anyway, going on to road rep.
Yeah.
So then you're serving directors.
Yeah. So then I'm serving director. So
yeah.
As luck would have it, right when I was transitioning out of that, one of the reps from the school service dealer that called on me was retiring. So, and transitioned to there. So now I'm a road rep for Kidder Music, and I love that job. So, I don't mind driving. Obviously, I still have to do a lot of it today, and being able to talk to and help directors get things that they needed for their programs was really, really nice. I'd still be doing that job. I'd still be a road rep at Kidder Music today, save for the fact that my wife and I just didn't want to live in Peoria, Illinois anymore.
Sure.
So we made the move out to Montana after we did that gig. I did that gig for about 4 years, and then so my wife and I quit our job, sold our house, and moved to Missoula.
Missoula's a great town.
Oh man, it's the best.
I visited a couple times, had a friend out there, and he actually, ended up at school at UND, became friends. He's now working in our Sioux Falls location, but inspired us to go out to Missoula. Again, I didn't know you lived in Missoula.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Well, we weren't there long enough. We were sadly only there for.
So you've hiked the M.
Oh, absolutely.
Get a hike the M.
Definitely hike the M. It's funny. So the first, we kind of got into hiking shape out there, and you forget, so we did it a lot. We love to hike and camp and fish. And so living in Montana was like just the best. As my wife likes to say, we were living our best life in Montana. We were the best versions of ourselves.
Yeah.
So we love to do that. And you kind of get into hiking shape. You know what I mean? Like you get used to the elevations a little bit. You can kind of do that thing. And I remember I went back. So I'd been with Yamaha for a couple of years, and I went back out to help at the Montana MEA show when it was hosted in Missoula.
Sure.
Great opportunity to get back there, see some friends. And so one morning I decided, okay, I'm gonna get out here and hike. But I hadn't done it in, a couple years out there. So, wasn't as in as good a hiking shape as I was being a flatlander. And man, I got about a half mile in, and it was pretty rough.
Yeah.
And you know how bad it is because so I hadn't even made it maybe a third of the way up. And so I'm going, and I'm really gassed. I'm like, bent over and just huffing and puffing.
Yeah.
And you get the real kick to your ego when you see the gaggle of, 5 or 6 teenage girls just marching right by you like nothing wrong. And I'm really close to dying. So but no, it was fun. I mean, we loved it. We were out in Missoula for like a year and a half. But man, talk about just luck and how, this industry, sometimes these opportunities just come along. So the day that we moved to Missoula, a friend of mine who I worked with back at Kidder Music at the school service dealer in Peoria, the day that we got out there, he sends me a message. He says, hey, check out the Yamaha site. They got this listing for, a job opening. So, okay, I'll check it out. And it was a guy by the name of Larry Chamberlain, who is the district manager in the Northwest part of the country. And that was his territory. He was retiring. So they had the job posting listed for district manager. And of course I was like, well, I'll never get that job, but why not? Right. Why not apply and, foot in the door, all that kind of stuff. So did that, went through many rounds of interviews with Yamaha. It was actually a really great experience. So I didn't end up getting that job, but I was a finalist for it. So, met enough of the people, made a good enough impression with the right people. And so what ended up happening was Yamaha then had another opening that came along a few months later called Associate District Manager. That's a fancy way of saying trainee for district manager, because they had a few retirements on the horizon. So they had a few district managers across the country that they knew were going to be retiring within the next few years. So they created this position to have somebody in the pipeline. Mm-hmm. So that's what I did. So I started with Yamaha in that position. Strangely enough, it was a year to the day after I sent in my application for district manager. That was my first day as associate district manager.
Wow.
So I had a full year of being, again, as my wife likes to call it, fun employed. So I was fun employed for a while. Mm-hmm. Odd jobs and playing and teaching and gigging and making things work. Well, I mean, she had very quickly, my wife had got a job in Missoula and was doing well. But so the great thing about it, I mean, we can talk about the Yamaha side in a second, but just as a job in general, we had a choice to make, because we knew that the nature of this associate district manager job, which all I did was job shadow basically all the other district managers. So every week I would fly to a different part of the country and travel with the DM, see how they did the job, because there's many different ways, many different approaches. So, but it was a really valuable experience. So I did that for about 5 months until this territory opened up, and I was placed here, which was great. But yeah, you learn from all these people that are doing it and see all the different ways to do it and the approaches it takes. It was great. So I did that for a minute. But yeah, but I knew we my wife and I both discussed it. We knew when I took this job that we wouldn't be able to stay in Missoula, because there's no territory, at least within Yamaha at that time. And now would have worked to live in Missoula and work the territory. So we knew it was going to move us out of there. So it was a sacrifice we were willing to make, even though we loved Missoula so much, man. I mean, we used to just in Missoula, they've got I can't remember the name of the river, but that river that flows right through town. Yeah. And so that was like a hang in the summer. You could,
I bet.
Literally Tiffany would take off for lunch for work, and we could just float for like 20 minutes down the thing, and then she'd go back to work. And it was a whole thing.
Yeah, it's a cool lifestyle.
Oh man.
Yeah. Well, in the hiking, I mean, you guys are active. How about snowboarding or skiing?
So neither one of us have been brave enough to get up and on any one of those yet. Okay. I worry, like, if I'm on skis, my legs are going to do this, so they're going to do this, and I'm going down. And I've heard snowboarding's even harder. I could try it one day, but I've never.
It's also, as a musician, I mean, it's common to break a wrist or something, Like I had a friend, we were going, and he just caught an edge on a snowboard. We were going like a mile an hour, literally. And he put himself out like this, and he said, my wrist is kind of sore. Like, I'm just going to go back in. It was broken. Yeah. And literally it wasn't like a high speed, cool tumble or a good story or anything. No, it was like just the act of falling like this can be, devastating. So
that's
I get it.
Takes. So yeah, we did.
Yeah. So you've been out to Glacier then a bunch.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it's just right in the backyard there.
Beautiful. It's beautiful. Well, like I say, as a couple flatlanders,
yeah,
living in Missoula was like living in a postcard, because you think, and mountains and it's surroundings. Man, it was the best.
Yeah.
But we knew. Yeah. So we knew when we decided, okay, I'm gonna take this Yamaha gig. We knew it would move us out of there. But of the few kind of territories that were, potential on the horizon, of course, the one that I have now was the one that I really wanted. So, it all worked out.
Yeah.
That we get to do this. And, my wife and my family are all from the Peoria area in Illinois. So that was the biggest struggle about being out there. You're pretty far away. It's a 24-hour drive.
Oh, yeah.
To get back. So,
I mean, Western Montana is obviously, mountainous and beautiful, but the rest is, farm fields and flat and very similar to the Dakotas and most of Minnesota.
Few and far between, right?
Yep.
So now being back a little closer to family is nice in southern Minnesota where we are now. But yeah, so kind of continuing on the journey. So the Yamaha gig works out, associate district manager. I do that for a few months from Missoula, because I was literally leaving somewhere, going to the airport, flying somewhere on a Monday, getting home, flying back on a Friday or Saturday.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's grueling.
5 or 6 days a week.
Yeah.
Because that's every week. That's
a tough lifestyle too.
Yeah, it's a lot. But it got us, my wife and I, kind of used to what the job would be.
Sure.
Because that was the other big part of it. Not only we knew that the job would move us, but we knew that it would be a job that travel was going to be a heavy component of it. Mm-hmm. And so that's always a consideration with this kind of thing, is it's difficult to do this job, for your partner, right? That the travel thing is, it's a thing.
But it's a lifestyle.
It absolutely is.
And it can be draining.
Yeah. And so kind of getting used to that and getting a taste for it there kind of set that up where, traveling 5-6 days a week, every week, pretty much for a 5 or 6 month period was a lot. And I'm not traveling as, doing that now, but still travel quite a bit. So got us used to it. So yeah, 5 or 6 months of that, and then got this territory, which was great. Which of course the Dakotas and all of Minnesota, Wisconsin, and half of Iowa is what I do now. So we moved back, bounced around a little bit, lived in Wisconsin for a minute, then running a place in Rochester, and now we have the home that we've been in Owatonna, southern Minnesota, for the last 4 years. Time flies, man.
Yeah.
So been with Yamaha on this side of it, on the manufacturer side now for almost 8 years. So an interesting journey, right? Like player, educator, then on the school service side for the dealer, and now on the manufacturer side.
You've hit all points.
Yeah.
Which is, it's important, in your position now to have those different perspectives.
Yeah.
I'd actually like to touch on the service side of it. So when you're learning music, it's a self pursuit, right? Like you're learning the skill. Most people that, get their master's or undergrad in music excel at it and also have a passion for it. Some people having the intent to gig or perform, but also maybe teaching or whatever that path may be. But as soon as you went to teaching, it's now a service, which we had talked about the difficulties there. And then on the music retailer side, you're serving educators.
Yep.
So there's still that service. You're still, helping people learn, and you're supporting a different part of music education.
Yeah.
And then again, now from your perspective, can you talk about the 3 different sides of service that are there? Because I talk about that all the time with our team is about, we're serving. We're helping people. I don't mean to say this too cavalier, being the owner of Popplers, but when I started, I asked the prior owner, so what's your sales training? Like, what are we doing? Expecting it to be this, whole process. And he said, well, be honest, be nice, and learn your product, and, make sure that you're helping people.
Yeah.
And, it's just, that goes so far. And I see that in you, whether you intentionally think about it or whatever it is, but I'd like to touch on the service side because it's something I think about a lot.
Yeah. So that's completely my attitude. Right. So it's funny. This job now technically would be described as a sales job. Right. Mm-hmm. So I'm beholden to, hitting budget numbers and selling our instruments into the dealers that then turn and help get those instruments into the hands of, a lot of kids, good adults too, right? Players that help people find the right instrument. So, but even though it's a sales job, how I view it, how I've always viewed it, and the only way that I can be successful in doing it is by viewing it as more of a education and service-based job, right? Helping people to find the right thing, to find the best thing, helping instruments find their way into the hands of people that need them, that kind of thing. So yeah, but it's kind of different as you evolve through the different stages. When I became a teacher, that's what it's all about, right? It's all about helping kids find joy out of the music making process, right? Whatever it is, whether it's those beginners, the first day with the shiny new instruments, which was my favorite, by the way. Teaching beginners was always my favorite.
Yeah.
I loved beginners, and I really also enjoyed high school. So, the beginners, everything's so exciting, and they're hanging on your every word. It gets, and the shiny new instruments, and it's all great. High school I like too, because the kids are a little older and they kind of get your jokes, and so it's kind of funny. I struggled with the in between, right? Sure. Like adolescent-y, hormone-y kind, and it was tough for me. That was tough for me. Yeah. But beginners and high schoolers, I loved it. So yeah, but that's all about an attitude of service to those kids, right? So you can help them hopefully have an experience with music that's similar to your own. Where would I be? What would I be doing without music as part of life? It's hard to say.
Yeah, it's so fundamental.
Man, and it started so early. I even started a couple years before our band program in school. I remember our band director, Ted Wanick, shout out, just the best. Great trombone player. Great guy. Everybody loved him. And, I grew up in a small farm town, and our class sizes were like 60, 70.
Sure.
So in the whole high school, you've probably got 250, maybe at the most 300 students. And, over 100 every year in high school, we had over 100 kids in band. So you're half the high schoolers in band. Yeah, everybody, loved Mr. Wanick and, just wanted to be in band. So, but I even started a couple of years prior to that because Mr. Wanick was very, very clever. So he hung like instrument, posters and things in the cafeteria. So I was coming in as a third grader, and I saw this really cool picture of a saxophone that he put up, and I was like, oh man,
Yeah.
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 So I actually started a couple years prior to our band program. There was a local kind of music academy, did private lessons, right? Again, talk about luck. The teacher that I got there, so I started just kind of taking private lessons on saxophone. That was the same teacher that I had all the way through the end of high school, Sarah Walczyk. I need another shout out. Fantastic saxophone player, great teacher, retired band director now. So lucky to have her as my teacher. I learned so many things, and that's a whole other conversation we can go down about the importance of that kind of advisor in your life and the mentor and anything. But then
every successful musician has those key teachers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
So, but it really worked out because I went then from her to Jim, her husband, was my college studio professor.
Oh, in the world.
Yeah. Was the undergrad, was the studio teacher at sax professor at Illinois State right in my undergrad. So this long relationship with them and learning and all this kind of stuff. But, from such an early age, music played such an important part of my life, and learning the saxophone and learning how to play it was so key. And so many opportunities have evolved in my life out of that, right? Mm-hmm. When I was at grad school, they sent a sax quartet that I was in to Russia to go play.
Very cool.
Sister City thing, and I would have never done that had it not been for music, right? All the people that I've met, all the things that I've done. And I remember I would always say that when I was a teacher, band director, I would always say that to the kids a lot, especially during like recruitment when I was trying to recruit the new class of beginners every year. I would talk about that. I would talk about how music has done so many things for me and created so many opportunities in my life and given me so many amazing experiences. Only in that, short amount of time, I wanted the kids to see that possibility, right? And so that I usually had a lot of kids join up in band for that kind of thing, right? To have them experience the joy of making music. So that was part of when we talk about the service of being an educator, that's what I was trying to do. I was trying to get kids to reach that same level of joy and appreciation for music in their life as I had when I was, really young. So that was sort of the approach, right? And then you transition to road rep. And speaking of service and being of help, yes, the end goal is always, whether I was a teacher, a road rep, or now a manufacturer rep, right? The end goal is always still that kid.
Yep.
The end goal is getting an instrument into that kid's hands that allows them to experience joy by making music, right? So as a road rep, it was helping the teachers then as best as I could. And the thing was, having been where they are, having been in those trenches, so to speak, you can understand their struggles.
Yes.
And you can relate to the things that they're up against. And so you do the best you can to help them navigate that, right? Not just get them the products that they need, if they need instruments for their programs or, reeds and valve oils and all that kind of stuff, but finding ways to help collaborate with them. If even if it was coming in, since I had some experience as an educator, I could come in and maybe, play with their band sometime or, play with their kids and do some things like that or help in that capacity, which I was always happy to do. Or sometimes it was just good for them to have a sounding board, right? And somebody that they could kind of commiserate with and talk to about, their experience. And it's nice sometimes when and I'm sure you guys have experienced this, when you're calling on these schools, the vast majority of the schools that I called on as a road rep were small farm communities, farm town communities dotted throughout.
Oh, absolutely. That's all of our area,
So
that's
you have
all.
a couple base programs, which maybe there's a lot of horns here and all this kind of stuff, which is great. But for the most part, you're calling on these places. And if not for me going out to see them, they're kind of out on an island, right? There might not be another resource for them. So for a lot of them, I was kind of like a lifeline. I had a lot of respect for that responsibility, right? To help their programs grow as best I could. So that's definitely the motivation there. But the funny thing is even though technically being a road rep is a sales position, right? You're selling into those programs if they need to buy instruments and things like that. And so again, there's budgetary numbers to try to hit and you're trying to do that kind of thing, but it's all born out of helping. And that's always had to be that way for me because I've never, if you think about what your prototypical sales guy is and the kinds of things you think, you've seen those movies, ABC always be closing.
For a used car salesperson, whatever that persona is.
Yeah, exactly. You think about that and that's definitely
especially prevalent from like the early 1900s, mid 1900s. I mean, it came out for a reason, but this is just different. The approach is so different.
It is, and it has to be. And it's funny because there was actually a brief time between teaching and being a road rep where I spent about 8 weeks as an insurance salesman.
Oh, sure.
the worst 8 weeks. So I knew it was this for such terrible.
Yeah.
Well, because I'm just like cold calling and door knocking.
So okay, so very typical.
I got a very brief but impactful education on what that
Interesting.
sort of selling and sort of thing is like. And then, then I'm a road rep, and yes, technically a sales job, but yeah, a much different approach.
Yeah.
Right? And that's not to say that, people can't do that job or this job, like I do now, and approach it with more kind of prototypical sales characteristics. You certainly can. You can be very successful that way. But I know for me to be successful in this, I have to just be honest with myself and how I approach this, which is definitely from a standpoint of education and helping and service. So that served me very well. And that gig, doing that for a number of years, and much the same now, because what I do now as a vendor rep it's like being a road rep, just on a bigger scale. Mm-hmm. And I might not be calling directly on band directors. I'm calling more on music stores and store owners and things like that. But my goal is always the same. My goal is to help music store staff and people understand our products better and help them to be able to help their director customers and ultimately
which trickles back to the student.
Get a horn into the hands that's the best horn for them. And so it's a big part of the reason why my wife and I decided to say yes when the job opportunity came along for Yamaha. We were loving our life in Missoula. There would have been other opportunities for employment for me that would have kept us out there. And even though, we knew this Yamaha gig was gonna move us ultimately, and the decision to say yes wasn't just because, okay, it's a good job, that would be enough for us, financially, which is fine. And with a good company, a reputable company, yes. But it was more so that it was Yamaha specifically, because coming from being a band director and then of course being on the retail side, you come to know pretty quickly about the quality of Yamaha, about how important that brand is and the instruments that they make and how well they work in the education space and in the performance space as well, of course. I know.
It's a legacy company.
Absolutely.
Let's dive into Yamaha now in general. I have been so impressed the more I get to learn about Yamaha across the board. We also are a full line Yamaha piano dealer, proud to be. And it's not only from, the company's been 1887. There we go.
I know that, right?
Yep. So obviously longevity, but also the continual innovation, the attention to detail, the spirit of being customer focused, the spirit of education, just across the board. So yeah, really, it's an honor to be, partnered with Yamaha from my perspective.
It's awesome to hear you say that, because that's, my attitude's the same, and every dealer that Yamaha partners with, right, our channel partners, as we sometimes refer to them, it works both ways. Like, we're very, I'm not gonna say selective, but we very carefully consider the dealers that we choose to partner with in distributing our instruments for that very reason, right? It's so important. Again, the end goal is the kid getting the instrument into the kid's hand. And so the emphasis on, dealers that can do that most effectively and share that passion for education and for doing that at the end of the day. So yeah, it certainly works both ways. The decision to do this job was ultimately an easy one because we knew it was Yamaha. And yeah, so there's a lot of things you can point to. Why Yamaha? Why is it so good? What are the things that you look to? Well, one, on the educator side, the consistency of the instruments, right? So if my kids were playing a Yamaha when I was a band director, I knew that there's a certain baseline that those are all going to exist at, right? At a minimum. And they're all going to be good. And all you want for your students when you're an educator is you just want them to experience success on the instrument. Doesn't mean like they're, going to be playing Carnegie Hall, but sometimes for that 10-year-old flute player, it just means making a sound on that thing, within the first couple weeks. And there's a lot, especially nowadays, there's a lot of instruments out there from a lot of different places, right? That look like instruments, but don't quite work like instruments. And Yamaha, head and shoulders above the rest, is going to work, is going to be quality, is going to be consistent. And it's going to set that student up for success as good as any other instrument that might be out there.
Yeah.
So
Well, it's important in that beginning stage that the instrument is not fighting.
Yeah,
Because you need positive feedback loops.
absolutely.
Look at video games. Like if you're got X game and you do this thing for 5 minutes and then you succeeded, and then you do something for 2 minutes and you succeeded.
Yeah.
Learning an instrument is a very longer feedback loop. And if you have an instrument that's fighting you, that kid can, be shied away quite quickly.
Yeah. You'd see it every year, right? You'd always have the conversation with students when you were doing recruitments every year about, hey, that's why we work with this dealer that brings in reputable brand of instruments. So do this, please. If you'd always implore with the parents, please don't go to random big box store and get this thing. But every year there'd be a couple kids that would show up with that, green trumpet or whatever, that thing. And it was the same story every time, 5 or 6 weeks, if the instrument even worked at all out of the box, which you were lucky if that happened. But then a few weeks would go by, something would go wrong, the instrument wouldn't work, they couldn't fix it because it was something that, you couldn't get apart or whatever. And then 9 times out of 10, you end up losing that kid. The kid experiences nothing but stress and frustration from day one. And and you lose them and they leave and they quit band, So yeah, having the kids start out on an instrument that is going to set them up for success is hugely important, right? Mm-hmm. So you notice that, you recognize that from the education side. As a saxophone player, even before I was in that space, Yamaha, great saxophone. So I already knew from a player standpoint, it was like, hey man, these are great horns.
And that's what I played on all the way through college. Yamaha student line. Then I got the intermediate. Yeah. And then I ended up with a custom EX, and then I loved it. And
still you still have, right?
Yeah. Still play it. And
YAS 23 was my first. My first student saxophone. That's right.
My experience through education was on Yamaha.
Yeah, exactly.
It was wonderful.
Yeah. So you see that, you see it as a player, you see it as an educator.
By the way.
Oh, absolutely.
I had a Yamaha piano growing up.
Yeah.
Yamaha all around.
But yeah, so yeah, you notice it there, and then I get into the road rep, gig from the retail side. That's when I really started to recognize how important Yamaha was within the industry and within the education space, because I knew it as a teacher that I always liked it when I saw Yamaha, but it's not like the only brand. There's other brands that are good and reputable too, but I knew that Yamaha was a very known quality. And then you get into the retail space, and as I'm calling on directors and you're setting up events where you're talking about, okay, the beginners are starting and we need to get some instruments into the hands of these new kids. And I had many teachers, many directors that had brand preference, right? And they wanted all of their beginners to start on this particular brand. And it was only ever for Yamaha.
Yeah.
Yamaha was the only brand that I had teachers.
When we have schools that do that, it's only Yamaha that I know of.
And that started to, then some bells go off and you go, oh yeah, okay, of course. And why? Again, consistent, what you're getting. And of course, across the board, when you're talking about like pro level instruments and things like that for pro players, yes, there's all kinds of great stuff that Yamaha makes. But when you're talking about specifically in that education space and specifically for beginners, what do those students need? They need an instrument that is consistent, that works, that is repairable, is durable, and will last them.
Love working on them. They have no problem working on them.
Because in the first few years, kids don't need all the bells and whistles that pro horns have, but they need a horn to work. And when they drop it, which they will, or bang it off a music stand or all those kinds of things, that needs to be repairable. And you need to be able to fix it and get it back in their hands. And so that aspect of it too was also key in our production. And there's a bunch of rabbit holes to go down about why and this, that, the other thing. But what I've come to find out now on the manufacturer side, now that I've gotten to this part of it.
Doing this for how long now?
I've been with Yamaha for almost 8 years now.
Yeah. So chunk of time, and you've learned a lot. And
yeah. And it's interesting when you start to then you get to peek behind the curtain and see why, because it was like when I was a player, I was like, yeah, this is great. An educator, this is more reasons why these horns are great. And it evolves and you learn more about it. And then on the retail side, and you get some training on it, and you learn a little bit more about the why. But now, especially on the manufacturer side myself, you really start to, to pull back some of those layers and see why. So for example, when we talk about how we design our instruments, the process that a lot of manufacturers will use is they will design the student instrument first. It makes sense because that by far there are more student instruments out in the world than pro level instruments, because there's way more, beginning band kids playing, than your pro, saxophone players out there. So it makes sense to design that instrument first, and then as you kind of go up in level, sort of add things to it, add more bells and whistles to that instrument, and then you create ultimately your high-level pro and custom-level instruments. The way Yamaha does it is the inverse of that. So when they talk about designing an instrument, they absolute top-tier, custom-level, artist level thing.
Yeah.
And they take all the lessons that they learn from working with educators, working with artists who all collaborate, and all the ateliers that we have around the world, and all these great technicians that put their ideas together into an instrument that is a wonderful thing. So they take all those lessons that they learn, and they, fancy marketing term coming at you, vertically integrate it down, all those lessons get filtered down into that student level trumpet. So that's why at the end of the day, you have a student level trumpet that has all of this knowledge and experience and history built into it that started at that highest level of thing, that's now filtered down into a very reliable, very tightly controlled in terms of tolerances and quality. That's the other part of it. Instrument that just works so well and works so consistently for that student, and is repairable and durable and long lasting and all this other kind of stuff. Because that's the other part of it. So, that design philosophy allows us to get to a student instrument that is really impeccably built and thought out and designed, but also the tolerances are very, very tight in our quality control. So when you think about when those instruments are actually made and manufactured, there's something in the DNA of Yamaha that is just different from any other company. And that's whether we're making trumpets or pianos or outboard motors.
Yep. Well, the story of Yamaha's concert grand piano, the CFX.
Yeah.
It was the same philosophy. In 1990, they started the R&D for their concert grand and launched it in 2010. So 2 decades of R&D, changing prototypes, all this, launched that, and then trickled down to all of the other pianos.
Yeah.
Hirach with Yamaha. What's his position at Yamaha?
I would get his title wrong.
Yeah, the title.
But
just so we can share.
Yeah, it's like a development and sales manager.
Yeah.
But
he put together some really nice information about Yamaha's premium pianos, which are the CF and the SX. And that term in the industry means premium, the top line. However, as he's been studying this, and Hirach is a wonderfully brilliant person, he said, well, every piano Yamaha makes is premium, and every instrument that Yamaha makes is premium in a sense.
Yeah. It's
just made at different price points, and you can only do so much with so many dollars being put into the instrument and have it sustainable and everything.
Yeah.
So like you said, I mean, it's just a premium line all around.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
it's that attitude, right, of approaching it like that, no matter what the instrument or what the product
line is still a premium student line instrument.
Exactly. Well, because it's the importance of that instrument working the way that it needs to is just as important for a 10-year-old as it is for the that pro flute player that's soloing with the orchestra. It's maybe you could argue maybe even more important for that 10-year-old, right? So that you can get an instrument that sets them up for success the right way and helps them keep making music for the rest of their life, right?
Yeah.
So that attitude about not only just being really tight with quality control, no matter what factory it's happening in, we own those factories, we own that machine, we are controlling that process entirely.
Quality control is remarkable.
That quality control is huge. So that's a big part of the reason why at the end of the day, no matter what the product is, it's something that's held up to a very, very, very high standard, which makes a huge difference at the end of the day. So that's not surprisingly, I guess, what I came to find out, right, when I worked with the company, and you start to really see how these things are made and what the approach is and what the philosophy is behind the design, then it all starts to kind of make sense. Like, oh yeah, of course that would be a really good thing. And of course that would be really consistent because of, X, Y, or Z, which then kind of bringing it full circle, which is why it makes working for Yamaha and being somebody who is responsible for, yes, technically selling Yamaha instruments, right? Why it makes it such I'm not going to say easy, but why it makes it such a good and fulfilling and satisfying job is that when you talk about being somebody of service, and when you approach this job as somebody who's trying to be of service to the dealers that get these instruments in the hands of kids, it's an easy thing for me to do because I view my job as trying to be helpful, right? To trying to help you help Popplers music get instruments into the hands of kids. And it's an easy thing to do because there is no better company than Yamaha. There's no better products out there for that goal, right? Of making kids enjoy have the joy of making music than what we have than Yamaha instruments. So there's never a moment where I feel like I am trying to get you guys to buy an instrument from us or have an instrument in stock that you shouldn't, or that, that I just want you to have this instrument because I need to sell it to you to make money. That's never the thing. All the instruments that you guys have or get from us, we are trying to help you help that student. Yeah. And that instrument is the best way to do that. And I know the way in which Yamaha stands behind the quality of that instrument. I know I'm helping you to get the best thing.
Absolutely.
And at the end of the day, that's really important. Yeah. Very different than the insurance industry that I did for 8 weeks, where it's just a mess of very gray, dark stuff that, you don't want to be a part of. And it's an industry that's completely different. And there's so much stuff out there that's so bad and so deceitful. We're on the other end of this spectrum.
So straightforward and honest.
You're right. Yeah. It's an item that is going to be, the best for that kid to have that, that Yamaha instrument in their hands, or that pro player that's out there, gigging or selling out stadiums or whatever. That Yamaha instrument is going to be the best thing for them. And so it makes it easier for me to recommend those instruments, to you guys as ones to have that you have for your customers, because, I know they are going to be what's best for them. So I feel like I'm just trying to help you make that possible for your customers.
Yeah.
Right. It's not about, trying to sell something that they don't need or don't want. It's all about helping customers find the instrument that's right for them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you have a unique path in the music industry in general. Not everybody is first off a musician, then a teacher, then a road rep, then you work for a manufacturer. I mean, to hit all 4 points is actually pretty unique, right?
Yeah,
I mean, you
definitely.
know more people maybe on the manufacturing side than I do, but
yeah,
it seems unique to me.
Well, I think it definitely helped get me the job at Yamaha. Not to say that I didn't interview okay, I'm sure I did fine, but having that varied experience was certainly, really helpful.
Yeah,
and that's another thing about Yamaha. They're in some ways can be very deliberate, right? And so when they hire somebody like me for this position, obviously they want to make sure I'm set up for success, and they want but looking at my background and knowing that I have experience as an educator, as a player, and then on the retail side, it was good for me, right? Because they knew that experience would be really useful and really serve me well in this job. And it has, right? Because I do find myself, obviously, like I say, most of the time talking with store owners and people within music stores, but again, with the end goal of helping that educator, but I also interface with educators a lot too. So I still get the opportunity to talk to teachers and meet them where they're at. And the fact that I can relate to them, one-to-one because I've been in their shoes and things like that, that really helps too. And even from the player side, when I'm talking to players in this position, as I do too, not just our artists, but, people that are out and about and playing, having that experience on the player side too helps. I wish I had more experience these days. I'm still trying to find more time to carve out to play. I get, a couple opportunities here, but it's
actually a question I'm going to ask here in a moment, is that, experience with music yourself. But before we move on to that, you probably didn't think in your undergrad that you would be working either as a road rep or for Yamaha.
No.
Because you're going to go the ed route.
Yep.
If you went that route, you probably, getting your master's, you may have seen like professional musician gigging more so.
Yeah.
And there's plenty of people out there that go that route. I think going into undergrad, wanting to work in the business side of the industry, knowing that, I just going the public education route wasn't for me. I taught privately quite a bit over the last decade, wanted to go into the business side right away. I don't know if most people are aware of it. Like what, coming from the musician side and then the education side, you've already talked about the service. If there's a college student listening to this, or a teacher who's been teaching for that 5 to 10 years, and, we need great teachers in education. So I'm not saying, every 2 year bail out or anything like that. But for those that may be considering it, this side of the industry on the business side, you've already talked about the service and everything. What else? What would you tell them about, the business side of the industry that's they may not know about?
Yeah. So one piece of advice that I could certainly give to everybody out there who, maybe, like you say, maybe there's that, that college kid that's thinking, okay, maybe I'm going to be a player, or maybe I'm going to be a teacher. and not necessarily envisioning for themselves right now that they're going to be necessarily on the industry side or on the retail side. First of all, you never know. You never know what opportunities arise, and you never know what might be right for you in a certain chapter of your life. I mean, that was certainly the case for me, right? And like I said, I'd still be a road rep because I loved that job, but we just, we moved out of Illinois. Montana beckoned, and so we went out, and I got lucky, and the Yamaha thing worked. The one piece of advice would be, you never know who's going to cross paths with you and when. Mm-hmm. So we talk about like don't burn bridges, right? Don't burn bridges. So, because you might be, in your undergrad right now and going, oh, I'm going to be a player and I'm not, whatever. But there might be people that you come into contact with where, you could fast forward 20 years down the road and that person might be a really, really key relationship for you if you're on the business side or getting into the business side. And that may be something that's an avenue for you now. So that's first and foremost. You never know. You never know how paths are going to cross and cross again. So that was certainly true for me and helped, at all stages, like when I was a director and my road reps from my local dealer were calling on me from Kidder Music, and I had great relationships with them, and, we got along really well. And so when I got out of teaching, they were the first to come to me and say, hey, we think you'd make a great road rep, and this guy's retiring, and, we think it'd be great. And in the same token, people that I had relationships with went to bat for me and were great references for me when I applied at Yamaha. So you never know what that next path ahead is. I was the kind of guy when I went into undergrad, in high school, I was getting really serious about playing. Obviously, I've been taking private lessons for a long time. Again, shout out Sarah and Jim. Great, wonderful private teachers and just wonderful people. So, I knew I had an aptitude and I actually had a passion and a joy for making music. And I had gotten some experiences throughout high school of working with people in kind of a, an education kind of setting and teaching this and doing that other kind of thing. Taught a couple lessons. And so I said, okay, I think I could probably do that. But I've always been the guy that if I have a choice between the volatility of trying to just make it as a performing musician and not knowing necessarily when that next paycheck of the gig is coming versus, the steady 9 to 5 and all the things that go along with that, I will always choose the steady 9 to 5. So that helped my decision too.
Tolerance comes into it. I mean, Oh man, that's a turbulent life.
Yeah.
Well, and you're living, 10 o'clock to 2 a.m. with some of the gigs. It's just a completely different lifestyle.
Exactly. So, when you're kind of thinking about that kind of thing, those are the factors that play into it. And so, when I got into that education space, that was part of it. The reason why I did music education in undergrad, part of it was, yes, obviously there's the joy for music and I had enjoyed the teaching that I had gotten to do up until that moment. But also, that was the steady gig versus who knows if I'm trying to just be make it as a saxophone player.
Yep.
And then the other avenue to this is, there's all kinds of different ways and means and areas of study throughout this industry that you can get into. Yes, there is the music ed side. And I think for people that have a passion for music and a true appreciation for the education side of it and have an appreciation and a passion for working with kids, like, go for it, right? Do that thing as I did, when I first started out. But like I say, you never know when that next opportunity is going to come along and where those intersections of people that are going to cross your life. So, being open to those opportunities are really, really important as they come through. But in terms of like the things you can study and the things like that, it's another reason why I think it's important to be kind of versatile, right? And open to that. I mean, you can study music business and you can do these kinds of things. But speaking of being open to those opportunities, even though my undergrad was in education, my master's was in performance, and I find myself in a job now that technically is a sales job, right? I'm not getting paid to play my saxophone in a performative setting anywhere. I'm not getting paid to teach children how to play music, but I'm still part of that whole sphere. I've had an attitude from start to finish of continuing to learn throughout my life and learn from the people that I meet, then pick up those skills that are necessary and that help me do this thing. So, no matter what your background is or, what your path is, making it into this side, to either the retail side or the manufacturer side, like I'm on now, is certainly a possibility. But I wouldn't be here if it weren't for the knowledge and experience that I gained as an educator,
absolutely,
and as a player, and all those lessons that were learned along the way have helped me to get here. Right? If I had just gone straight to, college and said, okay, I'm going to do some kind of degree in sales or, music or otherwise, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be a vendor rep for Yamaha. The only reason why I'm here is because I was a teacher and a player and, found myself to the retail space. So this was a pretty interesting path, that got me here, but I'm only here because of all those experiences that were there. So,
well, again, to do sales correctly, it really does come with, knowledgeable experience, helping people, thinking about the customer properly. So, you had all of those where,
right.
The actual how to facilitate the business can be taught by the business,
right?
Which is why that was so valuable.
Yeah, absolutely.
Being a teacher and a musician, and
those skills are the really important ones and the key ones. And like you say, learning how to do it specifically where you're at, whether it's a Yamaha vendor rep or a road rep, for a school dealer. A lot of that stuff is learned once you start doing it, right? The actual nuts and bolts of getting out and setting your schedule and doing this and being organized and all the things that go along with that. But the intrinsic skills along the way were built out of from the experience gained from being a teacher, being a player, and those kinds of things.
Absolutely. Well, after chatting about that again, you have a unique, path, as everybody does with their own path in music, I guess. But yours especially on those hitting each side of this industry. I would like to chat about most everybody on the planet knows Yamaha, the name.
Yeah.
And, like you said, started in 1887, actually making, a reed organ was the first thing, actually.
That's right. Yes.
And it moved into
We started as a music company, right?
Started as a company. So we didn't know that. It was not motorcycles or boats or motors or anything. I heard a rumor that the motor side came about because they needed an easier way to move pianos around.
That, you know what?
I don't know if that was true.
That could be. I haven't heard that, but that could be.
So anyway, but what should people know now about Yamaha? What should educators know about anything in the band and orchestra world? Because that's your area of expertise. So what should people know about Yamaha now that they may not?
So I think there's two areas. There's the sort of advocacy education area and then the product area. So looking at the education area first. So what people may not know and what even maybe music educators themselves may not know is how involved and how robust and how much Yamaha has to offer in terms of resources and cultivation for music education, music advocacy. So we partner with many organizations where that is the mission, right, is music education and supporting music educators and that music education space. I mean, of course, you're going to...
Advocacy is important.
Advocacy is huge.
Probably at a federal level, they're advocating for budgets across the country.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And there are individuals and departments within the Yamaha sphere, even just within the Yamaha B&O or SSD sphere, where that is their job. Their main goal is to promote on the music advocacy side, right? And get into spaces and collaborate with people to drive the importance of that, both at the federal level, right? Helping individual teachers and individual districts try to improve their programs and advocate for themselves and find things. I mean, just a few years ago, as a quick example, so, the COVID relief money that was sent out to schools, to ESSER funding, right?
Yes.
So what we found was that while that was great, that, hey, all of a sudden, here's this, obviously it was born out of a very unfortunate situation, but now we have all this funds that schools can have access to. And it wasn't just, for music programs, it was kind of for everything. But being able to help teachers gain access to those funds, it was surprising how many people we would go around and talk to or see at state NEA shows, or even when I was traveling around with, road reps and talking to dealers.
Well, again, it's the business side that, educators aren't aware of all the time because they're busy teaching.
Yeah, teachers are busy teaching.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, there were ways that we were able to help get that word out and connect teachers to those resources where they could do that. We had built whole portions of our site and our landing page that we have a whole site that's dedicated to music education, right? So, and within that, we had resources about how to write grants and how to get access to these funds if you didn't. Hey, if you were told no before, try this method and you might be able to get, that kind of thing. And just being able to get that word out and help so many programs gain access to those funds for their programs. So it's things like that, right, that our music education and advocacy teams work toward, let alone then on an even higher up level, right, being connected, and to trying to advocate federally and making sure, things work on that level. So yeah, we have a ton of resources that we cultivate, but while on some areas Yamaha has been great at letting the world know about all the great products that we have and all the things, we haven't necessarily been great about letting teachers know about all the resources that we have for them.
Yeah.
So that's a big one that people should know that they might not know, that we do have tons of resources. We have tons of we've done a lot of cultivation of these things on behalf of music advocacy and on behalf of music teachers. And so if they can find their way, even if you just,
if you can send me the links, we'll
Yes.
put it in the description.
Absolutely.
Of this. We'll send it out an email.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because
Please do. I'd like to know what's out there too.
Yeah, so that's a big one. On the product side, of course, Yamaha makes a ton of stuff and ton of great stuff across the whole gamut, right?
Yeah.
Music instruments and even, on the motor side and things like that too. I would give one shout out, one particular product that has made a lot of waves over the last few years and is gaining in popularity and notoriety now. We're on the kind of the third generation of it, but we have one particular product speaking about the education space and helping band directors and choir directors and orchestra directors do their thing. And that's the Harmony Director. So that's a product that is completely unique to Yamaha. That is the short version here. It's an all-in-one tool for the podium, right? It's a teaching tool to help music educators just do their job better, right? We try to take a lot of tools that directors use, metronomes and tuners and apps for teachings in a certain way using drone notes and things like that. We try to roll that in to one product, the Harmony Director, so that teachers can have this tool next to them that can just help them teach better and more effectively and more efficiently. And it's something that's very unique. And every time we take it to state shows, if I see a teacher who's never seen it before, it's always a bit of a interesting experience to see the eyes open up a little bit when they understand what it is, because it looks just like a keyboard, right? It looks like a non-88 key, non-weighted key.
It seemed a little obscure, like, what is that all about? But once you showed it to me at one of those shows that we were exhibiting at, I saw the value, and I think we sold it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think we ended up selling that one to a teacher.
Yeah. Because if a teacher looks at it and goes, oh, okay, I mean, I know Yamaha makes lots of keyboards, but why do I want this? Keys aren't weighted and it's not full 88 and I don't know, that doesn't make sense to me. Well, really the keyboard is really there just as a way to interface and get into all the things that it does. And so we could talk for hours and hours about all the things that it does, but it was initially conceived as a tool for helping teach intonation to kids to play with good pitch and when you're working on balance, blend, and pitch with your band. But it does way more than that. There's tons under the hood. But yeah, there's lots of functionality and really great features there. So, and of course, all that, there's great videos to be found. You go to our website, you go to the product page for the Harmony Director, you can go down the rabbit hole of all the videos and things that it does. And Michael Pote, who's one of our Yamaha master educator artists, power user of the Harmony Director, is the world's greatest authority on using it.
Sure.
You'll find videos by him when you go to our site and see all the kinds of things that he does. So I would shout out that product to all the music educators out there that might find their way listening to this, because that's the one to know about. Yeah.
Well, and we were chatting about clarinet earlier during our product training that not everybody knows about. If you could touch on that, and then also maybe the popularity of the Xeno trumpet.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, maybe those two would be nice to chat about.
Yeah, so...
And it's more about the spirit of innovation here, more so than plugging the exact product. Just the story of these products, I think would help show that Yamaha, although started in 1887, the spirit of no stone unturned, like you said earlier, premium products across the board, investing in R&D. And these two instruments have that theme.
Yeah, so we're never satisfied.
Yeah.
Right? So, Yamaha, like we talked about earlier, kind of built to the DNA is a certain level of quality that you're going to come to expect. But like with anything else, you kind of start from somewhere and you learn as you go. So the first wind instrument that Yamaha made was the YTR1, right? The first trumpet, for what it was, I'm sure it was fine. Yep. But you learn the lessons there, and
it had to be a first instrument.
That's right. That's right.
Had to be a first one.
Even the very first reed organ, back in pre 1887, that Turkusu Yamaha built, the original Mr. Yamaha.
There was the Mr. Yamaha.
There was a Mr. Yamaha. Even that had to get improved, right? He made that for the students because theirs was in disrepair. So he fixed it and then realized he could build one and made one and then took it to this university and they said, well, but he hadn't studied Western tuning. So they said, well, this is great. And you build a thing that looks really nice, but it does not sound very good because Western. So what did he do? He went back and he corrected and took some classes at the university and learned how to do all that kind of stuff. So
yeah. Side tangent there. He started as a watch fixer.
Yeah. It was repair.
He would repair watches. Yeah. And that's what he was doing for a craft. Yeah. Obviously a brilliant engineer. And
yeah, there you go. But yeah, so speaking specifically of taking that journey through a couple of our lines here in terms of clarinets and trumpets. So the Xeno trumpet, for example, is one that's been around for generations now. And when with all these things, it takes time, right, for these instruments to get into the hands of people. And then before long, pro players are playing and those influential players are have it. And then it gets into the hands of more and more people. But an attitude of never being satisfied, right? Like I said, when we design an instrument, whether it's the Xeno trumpet or maybe like the CSVR clarinet is another great one that we can mention. That design process starts with many modes of input, right? So you have our ateliers all around the world, right? We have two ateliers in the United States, one in New York, one in LA, where our headquarters are located, many more throughout the world, Japan, Germany, other places. And that R&D process, right, really comes together through the minds of many different individuals that have contributions to this, right? Because a player's experience and an educator's experience in the United States is different than somewhere else in the world, right? So all those perspectives are very valuable when we're kind of through composing these instruments. So we take a lot of feedback, not just from the ateliers and what their knowledge as on the technical side of the instrument and how to tweak this key to make it do this thing or add this weight to get it to do this thing, but also from artists and educators in the field who are using these instruments and seeing what they do day to day, right? Where the rubber really meets the road. And so we use all that feedback to build into these instruments, and it takes time, right? Sometimes years to develop this process, develop this product until we get it out there in a way that it works in the way that we want it to. But even then, we're not done, right? So you make that first Xeno trumpet was probably close to 30 years ago. And we're now, a couple generations past that. Does that mean that first Xeno trumpet was like no good? No, it was very good. But we've learned throughout the way as we continue to look at how these instruments are being used and the kind of feedback that we get from customers and from players and from educators. Oh, we can tweak this, we can do this. And technological advances happen, right?
Yeah.
Oh, here's a new way to form this metal. Here's a new way to make this thing. Here's a new way to, make this process more efficient. So we learn things all along the way. And we have a practice of having the best minds and the best people to do this sort of thing. So when you think about all this talent and knowledge and experience from all these different fields around the world and an attitude of never being satisfied with these instruments, that's what you get in the end result, is you get a continually evolving process and a product at the end of that is as good as we can make it, right? And works for a really wide variety of customers. And speaking of a wide variety of customers, that Xeno trumpet. So you have a Xeno trumpet now that has evolved over almost 30 years. And, it starts in a space where it's kind of unknown, and then more and more people play it. And now it's the instrument when customers walk into a store looking for a step-up trumpet. Most of the time, they're looking for a Xeno trumpet.
Yep.
But there's a reason for that. It's not just that it's a Yamaha and there's that brand recognition. It's that there have been so many people over the years that have played that instrument and know how good it is that they understand that. Or even if it's a student who maybe their private teacher told them, go get a Xeno, right? Or their band director said, Xeno's, probably the thing. But there's a reason why, that instrument is as good as it is. It meets a wide variety of customers' needs. It plays on the jazz side just as well as it plays on the classical side, indoors, outdoors. There's tons of college marching bands that have full sections of Xeno trumpets that are out there doing their thing. It's just a really, really versatile trumpet that lives and plays very well in a wide variety of customers' needs. So, like I say, we're, I think, around 30 years of that trumpet being a thing. On the woodwind side, you've got an example of that in the CSVR clarinet.
Sure.
So there's another one, in the clarinet space where the CSVR isn't quite as, doesn't have as much age and experience as that Xeno trumpet does. So it's more in kind of like the beginning or middle part of that process, where like Xeno over 30 years.
Being discovered.
Exactly. Where Xeno has kind of become the industry standard. The CSVR is becoming the industry standard, shall we say, right? Yeah. And so again, it's a great clarinet. We have a lineup of custom clarinets, but this is more, for those customers that are in the similar to the Xeno space where, maybe this is they've already gotten an intermediate clarinet and they've been playing for a few years and now they're getting much more serious and they want something that, is of even higher quality. This is going to be the clarinet that they may play for the rest of their life. This is their pro clarinet that they're going to have forever kind of thing. That's where the CSVR lives. And so it's another one where it's designed top to bottom in terms of the bore and the barrel design, even the thickness of the key plating and things like that. It's all about making an instrument that works for a very wide variety of people, whether that's college student, just still figuring things out on the instrument, or soloists, or principal clarinet or orchestral players and things like that, giving them everything they need in terms of color and flexibility and tone out of the instrument. That's what it's designed to be. And like I say, an attitude of never being satisfied, right? Even on one of the last modifications that they made to that instrument, even taking things like the pinky keys and extending this by a couple millimeters that way, or changing the angle of that bend.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, that's not a huge
change,
But it's
but to the player,
all detail.
yeah, to the player that's experiencing, when they're going through fast technical passages and that pinky slipping off, well, why is that? Well, we can move that by a couple millimeters, and now you don't have that problem anymore. So doing those kinds of things, let alone, the obvious dedication to the sound of the instrument, but then the technical aspect of it as well, makes a huge difference at the end result. And because I would say, whether it's that Xeno trumpet or this CSVR, when we talk about the philosophy of design, right, and the story behind a lot of these instruments, at the end of the day, what Yamaha is trying to do is make an instrument in which you can hear the performers, the players, the musicians' voice through the instrument. If you hear, the principal clarinet player in the LA Phil,
Sure.
right? If you hear them playing a CSVR clarinet, it's not that you hear a CSVR, you hear that player. And I think that's something that kind of sets Yamaha apart from other companies where, you might be able to say, oh, I know that's that model trumpet or that's that model clarinet because you can hear it. At Yamaha, we want you to hear the player, right? And so we want to design instruments that just work so well and fit so well that they allow the player to do whatever expression they want to do. Mm-hmm. And that's what you hear, as opposed to, I know it's a Yamaha. No, I know it's that player.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, we've covered a lot of ground.
We have.
Anything else you'd like to add? Anything that I missed that you wish I would have asked you or?
No, I think I would just say thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. This was great. And, I always love the opportunity to just shout the good gospel of Yamaha, as it were. It's obviously it's a great company, treated me very well. But
yeah, Yamaha being great and all. We chatted about the spirit of this podcast and, being rooted in education as Popplers is and Yamaha and you in particular with your life travels. Everybody's got their unique story. So Thanks for, everything that you do to help support us and partner in, education. And thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. You're very welcome.
Thanks for tuning into the Popplers Music Podcast. We hope today's conversation sparked new ideas and reminded you why your work matters. If you enjoyed the episode, don't forget to subscribe. Share it with a fellow educator or musician and leave us a review. It helps more music lovers find us. For more resources, sheet music, instruments, and support for your program, visit us at popplersmusic.com. Until next time.